Good evening. It's such a pleasure to be on with all of you tonight, and I have the beautiful opportunity to introduce our speaker, Katrina Zeno. She is going to be speaking on the gift of marriage, celibacy through the lens of theology of the body, and just a little bit about Katrina. Katrina Zeno is the founder of TOB for Everyone and has been speaking and educating nationally and internationally on St. John Paul II's theology of the body for over 25 years. She is the author of 3 books, including Discovering the Feminine Genius. And by the way, she gave me a copy of her book when I saw her in Steubenville, and I loved it. Highly recommend it. The second book is The Theology of the Body. The Body Reveals God. Very good book too. Actually, when I came home, I read both quite quickly. I felt like they were really feeding something deep within my just desire to learn. And really, you write so beautifully, Katrina. And then her third book, which is quite beautiful, or a blog entitled TOB Tuesdays. So she was born and raised in San Diego. Katrina received her BA in theology from Franciscan University in Steubenville, where she lived for 23 years before moving to Phoenix, Arizona, to serve as the founding coordinator of the St. John Paul II Resource Center for the Theology of the Body and Culture for 14 and a half years. Katrina also earned a Master's of Theological Studies from the John Paul II Institute in Washington, D.C., and has almost completed a second MA in Theology in Catechetics and Evangelization from Franciscan University in Steubenville. While not speaking or writing, Katrina enjoys salsa dancing, the Argentine tango, hiking with her married son, Michael, and her 2 grandchildren. You can find many of her videos and podcast interviews on the internet and on her YouTube channel. So without further ado, I just introduce Katrina, and I just want to say one more thing. Every time I was writing to Katrina, at the end, she would sign off, "You are a gift," and then her name. And I was like, wow, like this is such a beautiful reminder that each of us, we are gifts, and to really unpack this more. So I'm very excited for us all to learn and to benefit from Katrina, the gift.
Exactly. That really will be one of the primary themes for tonight. So thank you so much, Sister Therese, and thanks to all of you for introducing yourselves. So I am currently in Steubenville, Ohio, I finished taking as many classes in person as I'm able to, and I'll be moving back to my home in Phoenix, Arizona at the end of July. So I know it doesn't sound like an ideal time to move back to Arizona in the middle of the summer, but I am excited about it because I've been away from home for 4 years. So it will be a wonderful thing. And I'm thrilled to share with you tonight my passion of theology of the body, which, as you heard, I have had the privilege of speaking and writing on for 25 years. So first of all, I know that she asked you to mute yourself, but I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself because I have a question I'd like to start with for all of you. And that question is if you were to describe celibacy or consecrated life in a word or a short phrase, how would you describe it? So just unmute yourself and tell me, how would you describe celibacy or consecrated life in one word or a couple words? Just throw it out there.
Life-giving.
Great. Maya, Maria, Brenda, any of you? Anything?
Sacred.
Oh, beautiful.
Sacrificial.
Sacrificial.
Respect.
Respect. Wonderful. All right. What about marriage? How would you describe marriage in a word or a couple words?
Sacred.
Good. Good. I was hoping someone would say that. Wonderful. What else? Marriage. What comes to mind?
Honestly, a lot of the same words, like life-giving, like Sister said earlier.
What about love? Companionship? Someone give me one more word.
Intimacy.
Great, intimacy. Okay, how about theology of the body? What word, one word or two words, for as much of you know, would you use to describe theology of the body? And don't say sacred, that's cheating. What do you think?
I guess this is more than one word, but just a fuller understanding of who we are as sons and daughters of God and our relationship to God
Great, good.
and others.
And others, yeah. Okay, so if you've never seen the book, this is what it looks like. It's rather thick. Okay. So what else from just what you know, what you've picked up?
Holy.
Holy, great. How about one more?
Peace.
Peace, great. Okay, so here's the way I would describe all of them. Total gift of self in love. So if you happen to print it out your handout, this is where it starts. That's at first blank. Yeah, total gift of self in love. And I love, because I come back to total gift of self in love often. So here's the way I often like to just abbreviate it. TGOSIL. Total gift of self in love, because it gets really tedious having to write it over and over and over again. So you might want to just put that in parentheses afterwards. So that's the way I would describe marriage. It's the way I would describe celibacy, and it's the way that I would describe theology of the body. And my hope is that these 6 simple words, total gift of self in love, will change our lives and also give those of you who are seeking it a tool for discernment, not just now, but throughout your whole life. Okay, so why do I say that marriage, celibacy, theology of the body is a total gift of self and love? All right, well, we're going to go back to the beginning, which is a very good place to start with Genesis 1:27. And Genesis 1:27 is really a foundational verse for all of our lives. And it says, so God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. But we need to add one really significant word to this description. Any guesses what it might be? I know I'm tampering a little bit with scripture, but you'll see what in just a minute. Any guesses? What might be one word that we need to add in there that's missing?
Can the nuns answer?
Yes, of course, of course.
I'm thinking a loving God.
Good. I like that. Yeah, because it just says God generically, doesn't it? Well, you're on the right track. Here's
Or-
the way. Yes, go ahead.
Or
Who?
a triune God, like
Triune, that's exactly it. God created man in his image. In the image of a Trinitarian God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. This is critical because so often when I ask people, well, picture God in your mind, and they often think of what? An old man with a long white beard. So that's why it's so valuable to add this clarification. It's a Trinitarian God that we're creating. Okay, so what does it mean that God is a Trinity? Okay, well, for a lot of us, this is kind of our first introduction, right? God is Trinity. He's a shamrock. Or here, if we want to bring it up to date, how about a fidget spinner? Because a fidget spinner is 1, and yet it's also 3. So it's 1. But it's 3. Not a bad improvement, huh? Over the shamrock. But those are objects. And so we can sometimes get an inadequate understanding of who God is as Trinity. And it's one of the most important concepts or realities that we have to get right. And so again, what I want to do is borrow from the language of John Paul II. And give you my description of the Trinity. And you have it on your handout just because it's a lot of words. So here's the way, because you'll hear gift in it, and you'll hear total in it, and you'll hear love in it. What a surprise. Total gift of self and love. So to say God is Trinity means the Father pours himself out in a total gift of love to the Son, and the Son pours himself out in a total gift of love to the Father, and the Holy Spirit bursts forth, or we can say he overflows as a fruit of their total self-giving love. Isn't that so much better than thinking you're made in the image of a shamrock or even a fidget spinner, right? That you're made in the image of this Trinitarian God who is totally pouring himself out in love to each other in the Trinity, and that love overflows. It's fruitful, it's life-giving. We say the Holy Spirit is the bond of love, the fruit of love between the Father and the Son. So this is whose image that you're made in. You're made in the image and likeness of this Trinitarian God who is a total gift of self and love. And that means that you are also made for a total gift of self in love. Maybe sometimes I can share my witness with you, because when I discovered theology of the body, the last thing I thought of myself was as a gift. And I certainly never thought of myself as being called to a total gift of self in love, because I didn't understand who the Trinity was and how I was created in the Trinity's image and likeness. And so we're called to this total gift of self and love that's fruitful, that's life-giving, because that's who the Trinity is. Okay, so where did John Paul II get this idea of gift? Because gift is saturated throughout all of his writings and theology of the body. Does anyone happen to know what these letters stand for, beside the fact that they're my license plate in Ohio? Anyone heard of GS24 besides the sisters? No. Nope. 5 strikes, I'm out. Okay, sisters, do you have any idea what does GS24 stand for?
Is that Gaudium Spes 24, verse 20?
That's
Yeah.
exactly right? So people think, oh, it's Genesis 24, but no, one of the Vatican II documents, which is called Gaudium et Spes, that's the Latin title. And this refers to a section. Like if I said John 3:16, hopefully most of you would know, okay, that refers to the Gospel of John, chapter 3, verse 16, which is, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. So to GS24 is a reference to a part of the Vatican II document, and it says, man cannot fully find himself except through a sincere gift of himself. This is the quote that I think, more than any other quote from Vatican II, that John Paul II integrates into his writings, which is why I always sign my emails and sometimes even my texts, "You are a gift." And under my name, I put GS24. And of course, people have no idea, what that stands for, but now you do. So GS24, man cannot fully find himself except through a sincere gift of self. That means every person, no matter what your age or state in life, from womb to tomb, is created, I like to say, as a gift to be a gift. So I want you to just close your eyes for a moment, all of you, if you'd be so kind, and just say to yourself, I'm created as a gift to be a gift. And just say it to yourself again. Self, you're created as a gift to be a gift. Gabrielle, Brenda, Julia, Maya, Maria, sisters, you're created as a gift to be a gift. You see, this is part of what it means to discern our life path. Is, Lord, how are you creating me as a gift to be a gift? So in one of my favorite of John Paul II's documents, I don't know if you've ever seen this document. It's called On the Dignity and Vocation of Women. And a lot of my book, Discovering the Feminine Genius, is drawn from this document. And in number 7, John Paul II says something just marvelous. He says, to say that man, meaning the human person, is created in the image and likeness of God, so right there, Genesis 1:27, means that man is called to exist for others, to become a gift. This is the statement that changed my life when I was really in a very devastated place after a failed marriage. And like I said, the last thing I thought that I was a gift. And here was the celibate man in Rome telling me about my feminine identity, that to be made in God's image and likeness means that I'm called to be for others, to become a gift. Okay, so who do you think we make this sincere gift of self to? Who might you think?
To God.
Okay, excellent, Maya. Good job. That's the most immediate and obvious one. Who else might we make a gift of self to? What are two greatest commandments? Love of God and love of?
Neighbor.
Yeah, neighbor. So I like to put this together in a little bit of an unusual way. I don't know if you can, are the letters backwards on the video? Can you see it says go New York? So this is who we're created to make a gift of self to. You got it, God, and then others, but also nature, the world around us. We're not supposed to abuse nature, but we're supposed to treat it with respect and be good stewards. And then the Y stands for yourself. Because as human persons, we image God by being both body and spirit. We're this sacred unity. We're not just a spirit by itself, and we're not just a body by itself. We're this sacred unity of body and spirit. And so we're meant to live in this kind of gift of self between our body and our spirit. So we're created for a gift of self with Go New York. Okay, sorry for those of you who live in Massachusetts or Florida or other places. It just doesn't work, but Go New York works. Okay, so this idea of being called to make a gift of self, to go New York, John Paul II created a very specific term to describe it. And you'll have to write it on your handout. He calls it the spousal meaning of the body. I often just write SMB for short. Spousal meaning of the body. So when you hear spousal meaning of the body, tell me, what pops into your mind? Like, what do you think it refers to? What does it make you think of? Spousal meaning of the body.
Being united to someone or in communion with someone.
Okay, so that spousal word indicates somehow union or communion with someone. Anyone else? Gabrielle, what does it make you think of? Spousal meaning of the body.
To be honest, it makes me think of sexual intimacy.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate you being honest. Julia or Maya, what about one of you? What does it make you think of?
Well, it made me think of like what does my body mean in relation to the other, or how does the other see my body? Like,
Okay, good. So somehow it indicated to you a kind of relationality with someone and the encounter through the body. Is that accurate?
yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I think for most people, and that's why I appreciate you being so forthright, Gabrielle, is that when they hear it, they think it usually has to do with marriage. And sometimes that it has to do with the beautiful act of love between a husband and a wife. So you hit the nail on the head, Gabrielle, and that this act of love between a husband and wife can be fruitful and life-giving. But do you think that's the only way to live the spousal meaning of the body? 50-50 chance. The answer is no. Because for instance, can you, right in your state in life right now, can you make a sincere and fruitful gift of yourself to others right now? Can you make a sincere and fruitful gift of yourself to God? Who says yes? You can. Okay, excellent. Who thinks that right now where you're at, student, working, that you can make a sincere and fruitful gift of self to others? You see, if we think of it outside of the sexual realm, then we realize spousal me of the body applies to everyone, because it means that I am making a gift of myself to God, to others, to the world around me, and to myself, between my body and my spirit. So for John Paul II, living the spousal meaning of the body, this gift of self to God and to others, doesn't automatically lead to marriage, but it does lead to union and communion. Two of my favorite words in the whole world after gift. That the purpose of the spousal meaning of the body, this gift of self in love that is fruitful, is to bring about a union and communion. And that's not restricted to marriage. So for instance, I want you just to think of a friend, a really close friend that you have. Can you think of the way that you make a gift of self to that friend? Can you think of a way that you've done that? Can someone give an example of the way that you've made a gift of self to a good friend?
Planting a seed for them when they needed it.
Hey, thank you. Someone else, how else? Think about what causes you to feel bonded to your friend. What do you do together that makes that friend close?
Quality time or acts of
Uh-huh.
service.
Yes, right. Have you ever listened to a friend on the phone for an hour, 2 hours? Because she or maybe he just really needed someone, especially for us as women. If we have relationships that kind of go sour, we need to process them. Or I don't know about you, but I go walking a lot with my friends. And, I listen and we ask each other questions and we're able to process things out loud. But we're in my condo complex in Phoenix that I get to move back to. One of the ways I would make a gift of self to the other people in my condo complex, it's 6 stories, and we have a lobby where the mailboxes are, is I would bake cookies or cupcakes, and I would put them in the lobby and on a sheet, and I put a little notice in the elevator saying, there's cookies, in the lobby, help yourself. And I would say, you are a gift, Katrina, 112, because that's my apartment number. It was my way of trying to build some kind of community among the people in my building, even though I often didn't see them. But it would be so funny when I would meet someone in an elevator and we'd introduce ourselves to each other and they'd tell me their name. I'm Tom. And I say, I'm Katrina. And they go, oh, you're the one who makes the cookies. I'm like, do you see, it's just a simple way of trying to bring about union and communion. So every day, multiple times a day, you see, this is our call. Our fundamental call in the world is to live the spousal meaning of the body right now, where we are, making a gift of self to God and others, to nature, and helping our body to live in union and communion, getting enough sleep, eating the right food. This is why I dance. It's because dancing helps my body and my spirit work together. And then I can make a better gift of self to others. So those things that we do that help us to flourish and help us to integrate. The spousal meaning of the body then is one of the constants over our lives. It's not something that you have to wait till you're married to begin to live or until you enter into a religious vow. As a matter of fact, I started teaching my granddaughter when she was 3 that she was a gift, because I wanted her to learn very young that she's a gift and how to make a gift of herself. Because this is the one thing that's constant through our whole lives, is this sincere and fruitful gift of self to God and others. All right, so let's look at how marriage and celibacy, so here are my 2 little visual aids. Let's look at how marriage and celibacy fit into this picture of the spousal meaning of the body. So please tell me, is marriage a total gift of self in love through the body that's fruitful? Do people, okay, I see you nodding your head. Gabriel, you agree that yes, it's a total gift of self and love through the body that's fruitful? Okay. What about celibacy? Is celibacy a total gift of self and love through the body that's fruitful? Okay, the sisters think so. Do anyone want to take issues with the sisters' vote? It's true. This is what is so fantastic, is that both marriage and celibacy are different ways to live out the spousal meaning of the body to its fullest, although in different expressions. And this is one of the things that I think is so liberating about theology of the body and spousal meaning of the body, is it's not as if you have to choose one or the other, as if, oh, if I get married, I can live the spousal meaning of the body, and well, if the Lord calls me to celibacy, I guess I just have to repress it. Oh, no, no, no. Because both of these, you just told me, are total gift of self in love. They're just two different pathways of walking that way. So for those of us, for those to whom God offers the gift of marriage, please tell me, how do they make a total gift of self in love through the body in marriage? Didn't know we'd be talking about such personal things, did you?
They don't share that intimacy with others.
That's exactly right, except for with whom?
The spouse.
Exactly. That's exactly right. They make this total gift of self in love through the body that's fruitful to their spouse, and only their spouse. Because from the beginning of God's wise, beautiful, and sacramental design, Scripture gives us the defining feature of marriage in Genesis 2:24, which says, "This is why a man shall leave his father and mother and unite with his wife, and the two shall be one flesh." This is what defines marriage. We're in a terrible cultural confusion about what marriage is, also about what celibacy is, because they're connected. So if we are confused about marriage, then we're going to be confused about celibacy, about consecrated life as well. But Genesis 2:4 tells us it's the one flesh union. It's the two becoming one, a total gift of self and love through the body that is fruitful. So remember my little sign I showed you, total gift of self and love, right? So now if I take this off, what does TTB stand for?
To the body.
You're right, through the body. Good, very close. Total gift of self and love through the body. This is what marriage is. This is what spousal love is, because it's the fullest and most complete way to make a total gift of self and love through the body that's fruitful, which is partly why we're having such a difficult time, because we've completely redefined marriage. That's why I know this is really cheesy, but it makes a point. This is what spousal love is, total gift of self and love through the body that includes the body. So in marriage, the total gift of self and love between the spouses, they become one flesh. So please tell me, husband and wife, are they two or are they one? Which is it? Are they two or are they one? Okay, one. Anyone vote for two? The answer actually is both. Because even though they become one, they don't lose their identity. The husband and wife don't fuse into each other. They're two, but they're one, but they're two, but they're one. This is such an important element about spousal love, especially for us as women, because we can tend to lose our identity in men and to think that, okay, real love means I decrease and I disappear. That's not real love. Real love, spousal love, means the two stay fully two, and yet they're one, and yet they're two. So can you see how this all helps in terms of discernment? And also in terms of relationships and dating, that yes, while you make a gift of self to the person that you're dating, you always want to make sure that your own distinction and your own human identity and flourishing is also being encouraged, that you're not losing yourself. And the same thing we'll see is true for celibacy, that you don't lose yourself in God, you actually become more of who you are. So marriage is one of the 7 sacraments. And this means that the bodies of the husband and the wife actually become the matter of the sacrament. Well, what do I mean? Well, every sacrament has matter that goes with it, and it's through that matter God communicates grace. So the matter of the Eucharist is bread and wine. And when we receive the precious blood, and when we received Christ's sacred body, that which was bread and wine, that's the matter that now communicates divine life, grace to us. Or in baptism, the matter is water. And that water actually is God's means for communicating divine life, his grace to us. Well, because in marriage, the matter of the sacrament are the bodies of the husband and wife. This is what so many people do not know, that the bodies of the husband and wife actually communicate grace to each other. That's why whoever said sacred about marriage is like, yeah, that's the bullseye. Because marriage is sacred because the bodies of the husband and wife by baptism have become sacred and have become a channel of grace to each other when they enter into sacramental marriage. Okay, wow. Do you think that that's what most people think when they think of marriage? Oh, wow, I can't wait to get married so I can be a channel of grace to my spouse. Okay, I don't think so. Do you see how much we need to retrieve? And it has to do, who's the PA? Okay, Gabrielle, just what you said. You said you wanted to know more about the sanctity of the physical. To me, this is like one of the heights of the sanctity of the physical, is the fact that in marriage, the union of the bodies of husband and wife communicate grace to each other. Wow. Wow. This is what we're toying with when we make sex into a recreational activity. We're desanctifying the body. Or another, we're desecrating the body. So this is all the job of all of us, right? To take this into our conversations and our settings and into our very being and use this as part of our discernment. All right, how are you doing so far? Why don't you tell me, so this wraps up our little piece on marriage. Why don't you tell me what struck you so far? Brenda, we haven't heard much from you. Brenda, what struck you so far?
Sorry, the last part you just said right now of the spouses and their body communicating grace, I thought that was beautifully put and said, and that really struck me.
Thank you, Brenda. Sisters, what's striking you? You're not married.
Oh, actually, we are.
I know. Get to that in just a minute.
This is my ring.
I was going to say
Engaged.
speaking, but yes.
So,
a
I'm
human
happily,
spouse.
yeah, happily married. I would say what struck me was this idea of like not cheapening sex, you know, and how beautiful and empowering when you are communicating that grace to one another in your bodies and you're creating with God, like this beautiful fruitfulness. Like even as a celibate, I still have awe, you know, for that and just to see the beauty of that.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, I don't know, Sis, want to say anything? Ditto. Oh no, I'm just kidding.
Thank you, Ditto.
That really struck me, that concept of how you know, the spouses become a channel of grace for one another. I haven't really encountered that before.
Yes, it's in
Yeah.
Theology of the Body. It is
Yeah.
there. It's a little bit hidden, but it's present because John Paul II has a whole audience in which he talks about the sacramental sign, and in that, he says the body enters into the element of the sacramental sign. Meaning, I'm sorry, more than just the body. He says the one flesh union enters into the element of the sacramental sign. Isn't it stunning? It's like, don't you wish the whole world knew this? Right? But I mean, we can't just go plaster it across a billboard because people wouldn't quite understand it. All right, let's move on to celibacy then. So we looked at marriage. So let's look at celibacy. When I think about how the church, or maybe what's more accurate, maybe people in the church have thought about celibacy over the course of time, it seems to me they've often looked to the single life as the model for how religious celibates or consecrated ought to live, because they're unmarried lives. Because most people perceive that people living celibacy for the kingdom or consecrated, that they are unmarried. What do you think? Sisters, you cannot answer this question. Do you think that that's accurate? Is that a good, like, okay, if we want to understand, if you think the Lord is giving you the gift of celibate life, are you going to look to the single life, the unmarried life, as the model for how you should live your consecrated life? What do you think? Is that accurate or inaccurate? Maria, what do you think? You got a 50-50 chance.
I'd say no, because you're not 100% single. You're like with God, you know what I mean?
Excellent. That's exactly right. But I think that this is the problem, is that people perceive someone living celibacy for the kingdom, they often perceive them as unmarried. And therefore, okay, it's just like the single life, maybe on steroids, or for some people, it's the single life on repression. Because again, they misunderstand the celibate life. Because back to our handout, once you've taken your final vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, you're no longer single. It's a mistake to say. I remember hearing a priest one time say, well, when I was single, and then when I first heard that, I'm like, what do you mean? You're still single? And he was like, no, I'm not. Oh, that was really important in my life to have that surface, that misunderstanding. You're no longer single because you are in a very profound and spiritual sense. What are you, Sister Teresa? Sorry.
It's okay. It's Therese, married.
You're married.
Yes.
In a very profound sense, you're married. So who have you vowed yourself permanently to? Who are you married to?
Our bridegroom, Jesus.
Married to Christ.
Yeah.
And being married to Christ, that means you're an image of his
Bride, church.
bride.
Yeah.
That's right. You're the image of his bride. Do you see how different it is from thinking that they're single, unmarried? And not only that, you are also permanently vowed to your religious community.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Wow. Suddenly that has a lot of content to it.
Yes.
Married to Christ, image of the bride, the church, and in a permanent relationship with your religious community, in a sense, married to them in a way. So here's how John Paul II, this is a beautiful quote, again, from this document that describes just this. In Mulier's Dignitatem on the dignity and vocation of women, number 20, he says, virginity for the kingdom, quote, cannot be compared to remaining simply unmarried or single, because virginity is not restricted to a mere no, but contains a profound yes. Think Mary, fiat, yes. A profound yes, and notice what he says next, in the spousal order. Why? The gift of self for love in a total and undivided manner. Can you see? It's a spousal reality, this celibacy for the kingdom. So instead of following the more common understanding of the single life as the model for religious celibacy, we're going to switch tracks. And we're going to follow St. John Paul II's lead by looking at marriage and celibacy both as spousal vocations. I love this because, again, like, transform my life in terms of understanding celibacy in a completely different manner. Okay, so here we go. We're going to look at some theology of the body quotes now. In his section on celibacy for the kingdom of God in Theology of the Body, John Paul II lays out the interrelatedness between marriage and celibacy. A lot of people think of marriage and celibacy as opposites. So listen to this quote and tell yourself, is John Paul II describing these as opposites or as something else? Here's what he says in audience 78, number 2. Marriage and continence, so continence is a synonym for him for virginity or celibacy for the kingdom. Marriage and continence are neither opposed to each other, nor do they divide the human and Christian community into two camps. But these two fundamental situations, or as one used to say, these two states, in some sense, explain or complete each other with respect to the existence and Christian life of this community. Okay, so in this passage, John Paul II is pointing out that there's this intrinsic relationship. Notice he says they're not opposites. There's an intrinsic relationship between what two things? What are those blanks? Top of page 4. Julia, what are the two things? There's an intrinsic relationship between?
Between marriage and celibacy.
Exactly. And what's the next two words on the handout?
As complementary.
Exactly. Marriage and celibacy are complementary. That means we can't understand marriage without celibacy. And we can't understand celibacy without marriage. In other words, it's like two sides of the same coin. But you see, most people think, oh, we only need marriage. That's fine. Or they think that celibacy has nothing to do with marriage because after all, they don't get involved in that, sexual fleshy stuff. So, it's completely unrelated to, no. Notice how he says, we need both of them. Why? Because they are two vowed ways of living out, what's the next blank? What meaning of the body? Don't fail me here. Maya, what about you? What meaning of the body is it?
The spousal meaning.
That's right. They're two different ways, two different vowed ways. That's what distinguishes them. That's what makes them what they are. Two vowed ways of living out the spousal meaning of the body, and therefore the call or the vocation to spousal love. So let's see how John Paul II further develops this shared theme of living out spousal love in both celibacy and marriage in the same audience, in audience 78, number 4. He says, in the life of an authentically Christian community, the attitudes and the values proper to one and the other state, that is, the one and the other essential and conscious choice as vocation for one's whole earthly life. So those of you who said that you're in the process of discerning or you don't even know how to discern, this is what he's talking about, is that that's why you have to discern, because it's a conscious choice. It's not a default like, oh, I don't really feel drawn toward marriage. I guess that must mean that I'm supposed to be a nun. Or, I don't know. I'm not really into that God stuff. So I guess that must mean that I'm called to be married. No. Those are not conscious choices. The conscious choice is, oh my goodness, celibacy is a spousal vocation and marriage is a spousal vocation. And God has given me a spousal meaning to my body. And so, Lord, do you want to give me one or the other of these gifts? That's what discernment means. And which way am I inclined? And therefore, how can I open myself up to receiving the gift you want to give me? Do you see? It's gift. It's gift. It's all gift. All right, so back to that. The conscious choice is the vocation for one's whole earthly life. Here he says, complete each other and in some sense interpenetrate. Listen to this next sentence. Perfect conjugal love or perfect spousal love must be marked by the faithfulness and the gift to the one and only bridegroom, on which religious profession and priestly celibacy are based. In sum, the nature of the one as well as the other is spousal, that is expressed through the complete, or we could say total, gift of self in love. Okay, so please tell me, what catches your attention in this quote? Julia, what catches your attention in this quote about
Yeah.
spousal?
Well, definitely you marked the the essential and conscious choice of vocation. That really struck me, as well as like the interpenetration of both states and how they help to bring fuller meaning to the vocation.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very well said. Gabrielle, what about you? What stuck out to you?
I think, yeah, what stuck out to me is I've heard like, we can't understand celibacy without marriage. Um, but I guess I didn't really think about we can't understand marriage without celibacy. So that's
Mhm.
kind of like a newer idea for me.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in? What stuck out to you?
I think for me, just it's a reminder that we're also called to that spousal love. Like we don't live loveless lives. We're not passionless. Even as sisters, like we have desires for union and communion. And just as a celibate, like how do we, yes, how do we channel those desires and elevate them to Him, our bridegroom? And in loving our bridegroom, this is then we naturally want to respond by first receiving that gift of His love, but then to share His love, so that communion and union is happening still, even in the giving and the receiving. It's like and then we're also inspired too, like by married couples, like as religious sisters, and we see families living out their vocation, and it's true, like we need each other. So
It's wonderful. Thank you. That's why I love this image of the Holy Spirit overflowing from the inner life of the Trinity, because that's what we're supposed to be. From this loving relationship with the Trinity, it's meant to overflow to others, to the world. All right, so in this quote, John Paul II identifies his reasons for saying that marriage and celibacy for the kingdom are both spousal vocations. So let's go through and identify those 3 points. He says they're both, what does he say? He says they are both, you have to go back to the quote and see. These are the qualities of spousal love. All right, let's see. They are both lifelong commitments because they're vowed states. That means that they are faithful or exclusive to one spouse. Notice what he says. Perfect conjugal love must be marked by the faithfulness and the gift to the one and only bridegroom, or if you're married, to the one and only spouse. So lifelong commitments, faithful and exclusive to one spouse, and they're expressed through the total gift of self and love. He says it's a total expressed through the complete gift of self. So that means for married people, that the spousal gift of self, here are the 3 words, is total, exclusive, and lifelong gift of self. So total, exclusive, and lifelong gift of self of the husband to the wife and the wife to the husband. So simple way of identifying spousal love. Total, exclusive, and lifelong faithful gift of self. Husband, wife, wife to husband. But that means for the celibate then, his or her gift of self is all his or her vowed gift is also a spousal gift of self because it's also total. It's also exclusive. And it's also this lifelong faithful gift to Christ the bridegroom, but also to the religious community. That's why the vow is made in a consecrated life to a religious community. So we can see how they are both expressions of spousal love in different ways. So just in case you've never heard or read John Paul II's description of the way in which someone is called to celibacy for the kingdom as a spousal vocation, let's look at his description in audience 80, number 4. Here's what he says. In this way, continence, or again, celibacy, for the kingdom of heaven, the choice of virginity or celibacy for one's whole life, because it's this vowed state, has become in the experience of the disciples and followers of Christ an act of a particular response to the love of the divine bridegroom, and therefore acquired the meaning of an act of spousal love. It's pretty clear, isn't it? That is, of a spousal gift of self with the end of answering in a particular way the Redeemer's spousal love. Why don't you just take a moment and reread that on your own? I think it's one of his most important things that he says about celibacy for the kingdom. Because if we don't get the motivation right, then we can end up, what can I say? We can end up in a situation of frustration if our motivation isn't right. Okay, so what does John Paul II say? So 3 blanks here. What does he say is the motive of celibacy for the kingdom? It's the response, what? Is it the response because no one has asked you to marry them, so you just figure you don't want to be alone the rest of your life? So it's a response to loneliness? I see you smiling, Julia. What is it instead? What does John Paul II say in that quote? It's a response to?
He says it's a response to the love of the divine bridegroom.
Yeah. So guess who acts first?
The divine bridegroom, Jesus.
Exactly it. That's exactly it. That's why I think this quote is so critical. We don't think our way into a call to celibacy. We receive it as a gift because it's a response to the divine bridegroom's love. Okay, secondly, he says it is what kind of act? Brenda,
Act of
what is it?
spousal
Yeah,
love.
great. Thank you, Gabrielle. It's an act of spousal love. Perfect. And then finally, it is what's the third part? It's a spousal.
Gift of self.
That's exactly it. But what else does he say? Keep following the quote. A spousal gift of self.
With the end of answering in a particular way the Redeemer's spousal love.
Is that like just searing your heart? I mean, who had any idea that celibacy for the kingdom is such a deeply spousal reality? It is. Look at answering. Christ is calling. Christ is offering. Christ wants to give you a gift. And notice he leaves you free to respond. So this is John Paul II, the way he offers us to understand celibacy or virginity for the kingdom. And therefore, this is what we're discerning. So for instance, so I was married for 10 years and then my marriage ended. That was when I felt anything but a gift and my life was in fragments. I've been single 33 years of my adult life. That's a really long time for someone who feels inclined toward marriage. And so, as you can imagine, over the course of that time, I've had to ask the Lord numerous times, Lord, like, are you calling me to celibacy? And everybody else wonders too, because, I live a very religious life in the sense of it's very devout, it's very dedicated. I mean, I'm all in when it comes to the Lord. And you know what? The Lord has never offered me the gift. And I can't squeeze it out of him. And I can't fabricate it myself. And so what do? I live my total gift of self in love as a single person. And there are days when I am wildly happy because I'm living with the Lord, the gift that the Lord has given me. And of course, there are other days, like for everyone, when, okay, I wish life were different. But that happens no matter what your state in life is. So, even when it might seem logical, even when it might seem, to make sense, we still have to wait for it as a gift because we can never grasp a gift because then it's no longer a gift. All right. Let's just do one more section and then we'll end there and we can have a little bit of discussion. So do you think this is people's, sorry, do you think that the common societal reaction to seeing a priest or a nun or a consecrated person is, do they think, oh, wow, he's responding to the Redeemer's spousal love by answering back with his own spousal gift of self to Christ? I'm so impressed. Wow, look at what she's doing. Is that what most people think in our culture when they see someone in a collar or they see a nun or a religious sister in her habit? What do you think more often? Sisters, what's more often people's reaction to you?
Well, we have a range. Sometimes we have people staring, like, are they real nuns?
Is it Halloween?
Yes, Halloween, sometimes people think we're dressed up in costumes. But then sometimes we have people, they're so enamored. Like we see like they have this reverence and this awe, and they'll come and they'll entrust an intention to us, or they'll say, sister, it's so good to see you in your habit. Thank you. Like you remind us of God. And it's very edifying. And sometimes we've had people, I've had this, but I've been going through the airport and they'll make the sign of the cross. They'll see us, they'll see me, and I'm like, wow, like this reminded them of the Lord. And so it's interesting, sister, do you want to share?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because like I've had those reactions too, and like even sometimes when people curse, they're like, "I'm sorry," and I'm like, "You apologize to God, why are you apologizing to me?" But hey, I'm his spouse, so I guess it works. But it's interesting because recently I went on my home visit and I was surprised that people didn't look at me, and it's gonna sound funny, but they didn't look at me differently because it wasn't either like this, like what is she or who is she? And it wasn't this awe and reverence, but it was just like a normal everyday person. So I'm like, I don't know if people are getting used to people dressed differently.
Yes. Yeah. It was kind of matter of fact, is what I'm
Yeah,
hearing.
yeah.
They just kind of took it in.
I'm like,
Yeah,
there's other nuns in the area, but
yes, it's true. I think that as there's been this revival in religious life, and religious in their habits are more present, that it's becoming less strange. Although, I still meet people who will say, I never saw someone in a habit until, like they went, especially if you live in the South, where Catholicism is not quite as common or as popular. It's very easy to not see people dressed in religious habits. I think that it's interesting to have conversations with people about this. I was at the dinner table with one of my closest friends, and she grew up in a Protestant family, but she became Catholic. But her father, who was still Protestant, we were having dinner together, and I know him well because I have dinner together with them often. And just, I don't even know how the conversation came up, but he brought up talking about priests and their celibacy. And he said to me, you know what I don't understand it. He said, it's so unnatural. That was a big light bulb moment for me. That's the way he as a Protestant viewed celibacy, as unnatural. So let me ask you, true or false? Is celibacy for the kingdom unnatural? So I'm going to ask you to vote by your hands. Who says it's true? It's unnatural. Who says it's false? It's unnatural. Okay, who didn't vote? Exactly. Let me ask the question a different way. Is responding to spousal love unnatural? Who says that's true? Responding to spousal love is unnatural. Who says it's false, that responding to spousal love is unnatural? In other words, let me ask it this way. Is it natural to respond to spousal love? Who says that's true? Yeah, exactly. That's the way I should ask it. Who says it's false, that it's natural to respond to spousal love? You see, that's what he didn't get. He didn't have any idea that someone in a celibate vocation is responding to natural love. In that sense, it's the most natural thing in the world. But here's what we can say. The real truth is it's not only natural, but it's supernatural. That's what people don't grasp, is that celibacy for the kingdom is supernatural. Why? Because they're responding to the love of the divine bridegroom. And so it's supernatural. But people think celibacy is unnatural. Why? Because they're thinking what dominates them is, oh my gosh, you have to go your whole life without having sex. And that's what they think is unnatural. It's not unnatural. I mean, has anyone ever died because they didn't have sex their whole life long? I mean, is that what they put on priest birth death certificates? Cause of death, didn't have sex his whole life long? I mean, it's not unnatural. So do you see, especially nowadays, when we have this hypersexualized culture, how much we have to learn how to reframe our understanding, not only of celibacy, but also of marriage and of human sexuality. The other thing, though, is that it's so countercultural. I think that's the other reason why people think it's unnatural. And it's countercultural because it's virginal and it's Marian. And most people don't understand virginity, nor do they understand Mary. And so this is part of the witness of the sisters' lives, is that they are this profound witness to both virginity and Mary. Okay, so we're going to stop there because that's a really good place to stop, and we can pick up next time since we have a next time.